back, ladies and gents. It's your boy Rocco Yaps. Today I'll be yapping about December 27th. The monster Naoya Inoue faces off against David Picasso for the 122-pound undisputed title in the Night of the Samurai for the Ring 5. Now, um, that being said, there is a little bit of change in as of recording of this video. There's a little bit of change in the matchup in one of the matchups, but I will get to that in a little bit uh once I get there. So without further ado, the first fight of the night, first fight of the card, is a 6-round bout at 130 pounds between Reito Susimi, who is currently at 3 victories, 2 of those victories by way of knockout, 0 losses, 0 draws, facing off against Leobardo Quintana, who is 12 victories, 5 knockouts, 1 defeat, and 0 draws. Uh, this will be Tsusimi's third appearance in the ring event. For those who don't know, it's dubbed the Ring 5 because this is the 5th event that they held, specifically the ring. The previous ring event was David Benavides versus Anthony Yard. You know, Haney versus Norman Jr. The previous one was Shiraz and Berlanga. So, and then the next one is going to be Teofimo and Shakur. So that's what's going on. And funny enough, Shushimi has been in 2 of them already, and this is his third one. And he's only 3 fights in. So it's like every time he's fought in, it has been no, every fight except for one has been in a ring event, which is a big thing. You know, it's a big thing for a guy who's barely starting off to get such great opportunities like that. Uh, Record wise for Shushimi, in the sense of like his opponent, so, but record wise for Quintana, it's a pretty decent fight. Uh, he's comparable to his last fighter, who had like 3 to 4 times the amount of professional fights that Susimi has. Same thing with this. He literally has 4 times the amount of fights. Quintana has 4 times more. And this is back to back. So he's had 2 opponents back to back where it was like 3 to 4 times more professional bout fights than Raito. So that's a little bit of respect there. You know, it typically happens when guys are barely starting off and you want to have them test the waters, but you don't want to throw them in the deep end too much. But you don't want them, taking it easy on them either. Especially Japanese fighters, they're very much into not taking tune-ups, not taking easy fights, not waiting too long to build yourself up. They're really like that, especially if you have a good amateur background, which Reito does have. They expect a lot more from you. But Quintana has more professional fights, and I checked his opponents. Obviously, his opponents aren't going to be well known opponents, none of them are, but they were against opponents who had very good records when he fought them, like guys with, 17 fights and only 3 losses, stuff like that. Consistently across the board, there was guys who had very good positive records at the moment that they were facing Quintana. So that is a strong thing for Quintana going into this fight. Now, this is something I like to do if you're new to this channel, or if you have been here but you don't know why. This is something that I like to do just to get you more familiar with the record, the career, and the accomplishments that the fighter has before the fight that we're talking about, just so you can further build more your opinion and your reasoning as to who do you think is going to win and why, based off me giving you as much information from them beforehand. And one of those things I like to do of giving information is like the accomplishments that said fighter has before even stepping in the ring with the current fighter he's going to face. So we'll be starting off with Reito. He has a good amateur background. That's why he's starting off quick. Like I said, Japanese fighters do that. especially if they have a good amateur background. He had a record of 59 wins, two losses. He wasn't Olympic, but he was multiple high school and university champion, multiple titles in those levels. Um, he was also gold youth world champion. He debuted his pro fight in the Ring One in Madison Square Garden. That was the Ring One event where it was dubbed City of Wolves. No, Fatal Fury. My bad, Fatal Fury, where Ryan Garcia faced off Rolly Romero, and they had Teofimo and Haney in the same card as well, and it was in the middle of Madison Square Garden. That was his pro debut. He was the opening fight, and then his second fight, so back to back, was in the Ring Three, where Hamza Shiraz fought, um, you know, Edgar Berlanga, and then Shakur fought Cepeda, and then his last fight was in the ring, but it was still a big fucking event. Was in the undercard of Crawford versus Canelo back in September of 2024. Now Quintana's resume, uh, he doesn't really have anything. Um, all his fights were in Mexico except for two. No, yeah, all his. No, I'm sorry, I'm confusing. All his fights were in Mexico, but like I said, written down on screen. A positive for him is that all his fighters had very good record numbers wise at the moment of time when they face Quintana. So that is something. And then also, like I said, he has four times the amount of fights than Reito in the professionals. I mean, he has more knockouts. He has little knockouts, but even his knockouts are more than the amount of fights he has overall. So, but I still have, as you can see on screen, a 70% chance of Susumi, be a unanimous decision victory. But if there is going to be a knockout, I do see it being a TKO, not a stoppage. Like, I don't think he sleeps him, but I do think that he'll probably get a beating round by round to where the ref, the doctor, or the corner has to stop it. And if that does come to that conclusion, it would be around the fifth or sixth round, in my opinion. So, with that being said, the second fight of the night will be between Taiga Imagna, with 9 fights, 5 of those fights being by way of knockout, 0 losses, 0 draws, facing off against Edison Garcia, who has 22 victories, 14 of those victories by way of knockout, 0 draws, and only 1 loss in his professional career. This is a more interesting fight and a lot closer than the first fight of the night, in my opinion, because this will be a 10 round fight at 135 pounds. For those who don't know, 135 was for a long time a very stacked division. Super great talent, super great matchups to be made. But now it seems to kind of be dwindling. Haney, Rowley, Ryan, Teofimo, they all left a long time ago. Tank is the only one that kind of has been sticking around, but he doesn't fight any other talent. Loma retired. Cambosis, even who was a strong competitor level fighter, he went up to 140. Keyshawn Davis, he left. He is now debuting at 140 in the undercard of Shakur and Teofimo in January. Tank himself is kind of retiring, but supposedly gonna fight Pitbull. But even then, would it be at 140? Pitbull left too. Like I said, he was a strong competitor, exciting matchups. Cepeda just lost. We don't know what he's up to. So this fight's interesting to me because it's kind of building up like who can be the future interesting matchups for the other champions that are remaining or other contenders at 135, because 135 is seemingly in the rebuild up stage of it was once at one of the top. All these guys either retired or moved on to other weight classes, and now there's not much action in that division. uh, Fighters are pretty even and they're good at their levels. Garcia's more of a like counter, pretty smart pressure fighter, while Imagna is the same way, but I think Imagna's a better counter and faster, while Garcia is hits a little harder and he pressures very well in the sense that he could be a little suffocating at times. So, that being said, just to give you a little insight, we're gonna start off with Imagna's resume. He consistently stayed at 135. A lot of times some of these fighters they fight at 122, then their next fight's at 127, then their third fight's at 130, then their fourth fight's at 118, and then they kind of feel their way into a division where they're like, okay, this is my division that I'm gonna campaign at. But Imagna consistently stayed at 135. He only had like two fights where it was at like 136 or 137, but every other fight has been at 135 since. Also, he has three consecutive unanimous decision victories, which is pretty good. You know, three fights in a row where no judge whatsoever saw the other guy beating Imagna. Three consecutive unanimous decision victories. Last fight won Japan's um, Japan's champion. So his last fight was for the Japanese champion title, which is a big thing over there, and it is a pretty solid thing in Asia. For anybody who belongs in the Asian continent to face off against a Japanese champion is a pretty big deal. So that's where he lies in terms of quality of fighter. Imagna is title wise is at a Japanese level, which is a pretty good thing. Now here's Garcia's resume is a little longer. So Garcia's 14 fight, he had 13 fights, average fights like every other fighter starting off. But in his 14 one, he fought for the NABF title at 130 pounds. Then he defended it three times before the fourth fight, losing it. And after that loss, he decided to go up to 135. Then he went up to 135 once, came back down to 130 to fight two times. Uh, then he collected the WBO North American boxing belt at 130. Then he proceeds to move back up to 135 again, and which he is now here facing Imagna. So his last fight was at 130, where he became North American champ for the WBO, and proceeded to move up to 135 to now face Imagna. Garcia is the only non-Mexican dude. Also, it's kind of interesting. He's the only non-Mexican and Japanese dude of the night. For those who don't know, it's called Night of the Samurai because every fight has one Japanese dude in it. So every fight has one Japanese dude in it, but without, I guess it was on accident or whatever, but every opponent except for Garcia is a Mexican fighter. So that's the funny thing. It's almost like it was almost damn near a Japanese, Japan versus Mexico night type of thing. But Garcia isn't Mexican. He's the only non-Japanese or Mexican. He's actually Dominican. But with that being said, 60% chance to Magna. 60% chance because Garcia does have a little bit more experience in terms of professional fights. Like I said, he has more than double. Uh, but I don't think he's that, his level of oppositions were that good to build him up in a good way. Like one thing is like, I have 14 fights versus a guy who only has four, but those four fights he had were tougher than anything I ever faced in my 13 fights. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm trying to say. But it is a possibility that Garcia could win pretty tight. That's why I have it at a 60-40. And I don't think Magda knocks out Garcia. I think Garcia is too tough, too durable. So I have it as unanimous victory. Now, moving on, third fight of the night, we have Kenshiro Tirahi versus Wilibalgo Garcia. Tirahi is standing at 25 fights, 25 victories, 16 of those victories by way of knockout, with only 2 losses and 0 draws. Wilibalgo Garcia is currently standing at 23 fights, 13 by knockout, 6 defeats, and 2 draws. This will be a 12-round fight for the IBF 115-pound title of the world. This will be also Garcia's first title defense. and it's also Teraji's first fight ever at 115 pounds. Now, this was the video. This was the part of the video I was talking about in the beginning about changes. As of right now, making of this video, it is currently stated by the Ring and Turkey Al-Sheikh themselves that Willy Bargo, uh, who's the IBF champion, facing off against Tahiro, has been canceled because Garcia fell ill and was admitted to the hospital following the ceremonial weigh-ins. So they got weighed. They were getting weighed, and he fell ill to the point where they had to take him to the hospital. And they haven't said exactly what's wrong with him or if there is anything wrong with him, but they're just saying that it seems most likely that he won't be able to fight tomorrow. So they're saying that they're looking for late minute replacements. The bad thing is that this is happening in Saudi Arabia, so there's not, and it's literally tomorrow, so it's pretty hard to get a good guy to replace and still save the night for Tahiro and for the card, because taking out that fight is a pretty big deal. But they have this guy called Murda Ziamaled, who has one win, and it was by knockout, and that's it. Or another guy called Muawza Mohaub, who has 3 victories, one by knockout and one loss. But the interesting is that there's this guy who's the WBC World Champion at one. I think he's a WBC World Champion at 108. He also became European and stuff like that. But he was saying, put me in, coach. He's saying he's commenting on all the ring stuff, saying, yo, Turkey, put me in. I'm the guy. Put me in there, coach. I'll beat this motherfucker. Um, and he even uploaded in his Instagram a photo, AI generated, where it's like a cartoon banner of him facing off against Tahiro, and it says World Title Showdown. The amazing Kenshiro Tehari, Wonder Boy of Japan, versus the British challenger Charlie Edwards, the Pride of England. You know, he's obviously saying, and then commented, "Let's go at Turkey Al-Sheikh. I'm ready to step in and save the show. Bags packed and ready," with the phone emoji. So it's obviously saying like, "Call me up." So he's been commenting on all these posts saying like, "Put me in." He's posted in his Instagram, actual post on Instagram, that, hey, I'm willing to go there. He's posting all over his stories on Instagram as well, like constantly saying like, hey, put me in, put me in, put me in. So that would be a good fight. But like I said, this fight has officially been canceled in the sense that Willy Bargo Garcia won't be defending his IBF title anymore, but he will. Um, there will be a fight for Tehari. It just probably won't be anywhere as impressive. But anyways, I still want to read Tehari's resume for you guys, just so you guys are like aware of what was to be expected. He was WBC Youth World Light Fly Champion at 108 pounds, Japan Champion at 108 pounds, Oriental Pacific Champ at 108 pounds, WBC World Champion at 108 pounds. Had 8 title defenses before he lost uh, in his 9th title defense in the 9th round by TKO. Then he had an immediate rematch with the guy who TKO'd him in the 9th and knocked that fool out in the 2nd round. Then proceeded to have 4 more title defenses before moving up at 112 pounds, where his very first fight at 112 pounds, he fought for the WC World Championship belt and won it. Then he lost his second. He had a title defense that he won. The second title defense, he lost it. And that's when he decides to move up to 115 pounds and fight Willy Bargo Garcia. So that's the type of dude that Willy Bargo Garcia was facing off against. While Willy Bargo was WBO International Champ at 118, defended it 3 times before losing it, stayed at 118 to claim 7 wins in a row. Then he claimed the IBF Latino at 118 pounds, Then he decides to go down to 115, where he fights off against some other random dude for the vacant IBF world title, and he wins it. And this is his first fight, after that victory, and his first ever title defense in his life. Um, that's why I have a 60% chance for Terahi unanimous decision victory or a late round TKO. Same thing. I don't think he was gonna knock out Garcia, but possibly a TKO around the ninth to 12th round, because Garcia, in my opinion, was just one of those fools who got lucky, right place at the right time, and got a world championship belt, as opposed to Kenshiro, who fought tough prospects, fought tough contenders, fought a champion that beat another guy to become champion, defended it against tough contenders, moved up another weight class division. First fight became world champion, defended it against tough contenders, and then moved up again to now Garcia, as opposed to Garcia, who, you know, the highest he had ever reached was WBO International before claiming a vacant title against a guy who wasn't even that impressive to begin with. You know what I mean? So that's why I had Tarajo. But the 60% is because Garcia does hit hard. He does he does jab pretty good, and that's what Sandoval did against Terahi when he beat him. But in my opinion, he's not as good as Sandoval. He didn't, Sandoval really came in prepared, and is a little better than is pretty a little better than Garcia. And then you just add that the weight class also, like Willy Bargo is a guy coming from 18 to 115, while Terahi, on the other hand, is a guy who's coming from 108 to 112 to 115. So that's why I had a 60% chance, but I strongly believe Terahi wins. Now the co-main event of the fight will be between Junto Nakatani, who's currently sitting at 31 victories, 24 of those victories by way of knockout, 0 losses, 0 draws, facing off against Sebastian Hernandez with 20 victories, 18 by knockout, 0 losses, 0 draws. This is a 12-round fight at 122 pounds. This will also be Junto Nakatani's 122-pound debut. Never fought in the weight class. Now, I'm going to jump right into Nakatani's resume, because the reason this fight's very important is because Inoue is the pound for pound, always been in the pound for pound top 3 for the last like 2-3 years, and is easily the best fighter in Japan. But Junto Nakatani has been the guy who's doing pretty good at stepping at Inoue's heels when it comes to trying to claim that. And Junto Nakatani is easily the second best fighter, and he's not that far away from Inoue in terms of being the best Japanese fighter right now, currently standing. So, to promote the fight, they're saying Junto come up from 118, have a fight, get your body used to 122. You win your fight, Inoue wins his fight. You guys next, early next year in 2026, in Tokyo Dome in Japan, which will be a mega fight, especially in Japan, but it would be a mega fight for diehard fans. So that's why this fight is so important. And without being said, let's get into Junto Nakatani's resume, because it is a little extensive. He had 18 wins, were facing good Asian level fighters. Before his 19th fight, he fought and became Japanese champion at 112 pounds. Then he, 2 fights later, claims the WBO World Championship title at 112 pounds. He proceeds to defend it twice and then move up to 115 pounds, where he becomes the WBO World Champion in his second fight. So same thing like right here, went up to 115, dipped his toes against a good contender, and then immediately in his second fight in the weight class, went into a World Championship fight, which he did win and became the WBO World Champion at 115 pounds. Then he defends it once, moves up again to 118 pounds, where he became the WBC champ in his first fight. So instead of dipping his toes, he was like, you know what? the opportunity's here. I'm gonna go straight for it. Becomes WBC world champion in his first fight at 118 pounds. Then he proceeds to defend that belt 3 times. And in his fourth fight, he decides to unify against the IBF champion of the world at 118 pounds. And Junto wins that fight, becoming the unified WBC and IBF world champion at 118. And then he proceeds to move up after that fight to chase the goal of fighting Inoue, which lands him here fighting Sebastian Hernandez. Now, this is Sebastian Hernandez's background and resume. He has nothing really that stands out. He has no belts in his name. He has nothing, not even like an NABF or WBO Latino champ, something like that. He has nothing in his record in terms of belts or accomplishment wise against fighters with names. But all his fights have been in Mexico. Same thing watching his record. Some of them were little bad records. Like he was like, guys were like 2 victories and like 10 losses. But that was at the early stage of his career when he was already starting. But he does have good fights against guys who had like, 25 and 5, stuff like that. And all his fights have been in Mexico except for 2, which were in the U.S. But as you can see, he is a KO pressure fighter slash slugger based off his record. He is the Mexican who, loves to come forward, can take a lot of damage. It's hard to hurt him, and it's easy to get hurt by him. I just think Junto is too skilled, too slick, straight jab like an arrow, tall and long enough to complicate a little bit and add his beneficiary of that jab and his skills, good footwork, and he does hit hard himself. And he also could take a pretty good beating. So that's why I have it at 85% chance for Nakatani becoming unanimous victor, or same thing, late round TKO in the 9th or 12th round. I'm leaning more towards a unanimous victory because, like I said, Hernandez is a pretty tough guy. He can take a beating, and it's Junto's first time in the division. So I don't know how that would affect him. Maybe he can knock him out. Maybe he needs another fight to get used to the weight class to be able to transmit that power. Whatever. But if there is going to be a knockout, I do have it by TKO. I don't really see anybody sleeping anybody. But if there is going to be a stoppage, it's going to be TKO, and it's going to be around the 9th to 12th fight, later in the rounds, later in the fight, when Sebastian is probably taking too much damage and is too hurt and tired, and, he just can't take it anymore, and the ref or the doctor or his coaches and his corner stop it. But now the main event, the reason everybody's here, the other part of the pie to the Junto Nakatani fight to see who's the best Japanese fighter is Naoya Inoue versus Alan Picasso. Inoue defending his undisputed title at 122 pounds for a 12-round fight for said crown. Inoue is currently sitting at 31 victories, 27 of those victories by way of knockout, 0 losses, 0 draws. Facing off against Alan Picasso with 31 victories, 17 of those victories by knockout, 0 losses, and only 1 draw. This is also Picasso's first ever fight for a world title, and it's going to be for undisputed. So his first time ever fighting for a world championship belt will be for all 4 and the Ring Magazine belt. So same thing as Junto. Inoue has an extensive resume, a little more than Junto actually. So without further ado, let's get started with it. He has the typical Japanese resume where, like I said, they start off fast as opposed to over here in the West. His 4th ever fight in the professionals, he fought for the Japanese title at 108 pounds where he won it. Then his very next fight, he became Pacific champion and Oriental and Pacific champion as long as Japanese champion. Then he proceeds in his very next fight, in his 6th fight ever in his career, he becomes WBC world champion at 108 pounds. Then he defends it once and proceeds to move up to 115 pounds. For whatever reason, he decided to skip 112 pounds and never even attempt to go down to it. So that's a weight division that unfortunately he could have had in his record of being like, at least I was champion one time of this weight class. But without further ado, he was 115-pound champ. Uh, he goes up to 150 pounds, becomes the WBO world champion in his first ever fight in the division. So he goes from 108, skips all the way to 115. First fight there, becomes WBO world champion. He proceeds to defend this title for 7 consecutive fights. Then he proceeds to move up again to 118, has 2 fights in the division, and then in his third fight in the division, he gets the opportunity to fight for the IBF World Championship title, which he does become. He defends that title 4 times. Then he collects the WBC and the WBO title, becoming now the unified IBF WBC WBO World Champion at 118 pounds. Then he proceeds to try to move up, but before he moves up, there's one dude from England, from the UK. I do remember. I don't remember his name, but I do remember he was like, "Hey, before you go, give me the opportunity, and why not fight me? If you win, it'll be for undisputed even." So, Inoue, who's saying that he was having troubles in the weight class, saying that he couldn't maintain 118 pounds anymore, and that's why he was moving up, decided, "Hey, you know what? One last rodeo, I could become undisputed. First Japanese male boxer, well, first Japanese fighter in general to ever become undisputed in the four belt era. Why not? You know, stays for one more fight at 118, wins it by late stoppage to become undisputed at 118. Then he proceeds to go up. In his very first fight, he fights Stephen Fulton, who at the time was WBC and WBO world champion at 122. He beats him by late round stoppage in the ninth round. Then his second ever fight in the weight class, he fights Tapales, who was the IBF and WBA world champion of the 122. Beats him and becomes the undisputed 122-pound champ. And then he defended his undisputed crown 5 times, and now we're here in his 6th ever defense against Picasso. Now Picasso resume is a little shorter, but he has always been consistently at 122. He didn't really do that, weird this weight, random weights. No, he was consistently at 122. Then his first ever title was the WBC Youth Champion International at 122. Then he became NABF champion at 122. Then he upgraded that WBC belt to WBC Silver at 122. Then he had 7 fights defending the WBC Silver champion status, leading him to now being the mandatory WBC challenger for Naoya Inoue. This is a good fight. I do have belief that Picasso is a good fighter at 122. I just think it's a kind of a jump, especially since his last performance wasn't that impressive. He barely came out with a win. He looked too amateur, and it was too just not at the quality of level of somebody that you're like, yes, he's ready to be the mandatory fighter for somebody like Naoya Inoue, and go for undisputed as his first time ever chasing a world title belt. But he, he's a good fighter. He's a good fighter. He's natural at the weight classes. He's bigger than Inoue, and I do know that he's a good enough fighter to at least make it competitive and make a name and respect of himself, despite he could have respect and more fame and more recognition in defeat, as opposed to other guys when facing Inoue. That's the highest they do, and then after they lose, that's it. Nobody knows who the guys are, or nobody really cares about them. I think Picasso is one of those guys who could show a lot of heart, a lot of stuff, and do pretty good to the point where we're like, okay, who's this Picasso guy? If Inoue decides to retire or decides to move up to 126, this is possibly some dude who will be a good champion, claim one of those vacant titles and defend it, and he will be a good champion. But I do still have this at a 90% unanimous victory for Naoya the Monster Inoue. But if there is going to be a stoppage, once again, like I said, I don't see Inoue knocking out Picasso. Picasso is a strong Mexican, you know, who's tough. But if there is going to be some type of early, you know, stoppage in this fight, it's going to be because of the ref, because of the doctor, because of the corner of Picasso stopping the fight, especially because it's Picasso's father. It'll probably be hard to see your own flesh and blood, your own son getting pummeled round by round, and he's already losing. Like even if he wins these rounds in a row, he was still losing the points. Like he literally has his only shot is to knock out Inoue, but he hasn't shown anything, no signs of that being a possibility. It kind of forces your hand a lot easier as opposed to a coach who this isn't his son. It's just a fighter that pays him and he has him in his undercard. So that's why I don't see Inoue knocking him out. But if he is going to stop, it's because of one of those things, and it will be around the 9th or 12th. That's kind of what Inoue has been kind of doing lately. If he does stop you or he does knock you out cold, it's typically around the 9th round and above. Sometimes 8, 7, but it's typically around 9 and above. So that's why I have it that it is a possibility. Maybe he doesn't even, no one stops it and he doesn't sleep him, but he gets him in a liver shot. Picasso can't get up. That's a TKO as well. But that's the future of what I think is going to happen. You guys could call me a Japanese glazer all you want. I'm not. I'm actually Mexican. A little reveal to you fools. But I'm Mexican. I'm just a big fan of boxing. I'm a big fan of the sport. I have no problem realizing that one of my favorite fighters is going to lose against this guy, or that my race, like in this video, I think all the guys that are in the Japanese sides are higher chance of winning than any of the other guys. And I'm Mexican. I'm not Japanese. I have no lick of Japanese blood in me. I'm just a boxing fan, analyzing, reviewing their stuff, reviewing their resumes, reviewing their previous fights. I just come to the conclusion that I have more percentage chances for Japanese boxers winning the guys that they have. I'm not saying they can't be beat. Like for example, the Garcia one that was for the IBF World Title at 115 pounds. That one's being canceled. Bam Rodriguez beats the fuck out of both of these fools. Bam Garcia, in my opinion, beats the fuck out of Garcia and Tejada in the same night. So I'm just letting you know, like, the opponent that they have, the fighters that are in this thing, comparing them, I just think this guy's better, and consistently is showing that the Japanese fighter, with the opponent that they have across from them, they are a little bit better off in terms of being victorious. Now, with that being said, I don't want this to go any further. I've yapped for too long already. I've yapped enough. If you click this video, thank you for taking time out of your day and watching me and hearing me yap. If you aren't subscribed, please make sure and subscribe. And if you like these videos, make sure to check out my other stuff and stay tuned for other things that I have in mind. I will be posting like I usually do every time I make these prediction videos the day after the fight. I will be posting videos about whether or not I was correct in my theories, in my assessment, and what I believe is next for the winner. What steps should the winner take in order to continue prospering in their career? Now, thank you very much. Hope you guys are having a good days, good holidays. Hope you guys are doing well. God bless, and I'll see you into the next one.